I never believed in the things that go bump in the night, until I spent a night at my friend's house that changed everything. By the time morning came, I knew some doors should never be opened, and some shadows should never be followed. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, drop a like, and leave a comment. Watch until the very end, because the last story will leave you questioning everything about sleepovers forever. It all started when I was 14. A small group of my friends decided to have a sleepover at Emily's house. Emily lived in this older, creaky house on the edge of town, right by the woods, the kind of house that had a long hallway with uneven floorboards, where every step sounded like it echoed for miles. The perfect place for a sleepover, or so we thought. The first few hours were harmless fun. Games, movies, and endless snacking. But as midnight approached, the house changed. Not in an obvious, scary way. Nothing jumped out at us. Nothing fell off the shelves. It was subtle, the kind of change you feel in your gut. The air became heavier. The silence between the creaks of the house stretched longer. And even the shadows cast by the moonlight through the curtains seemed to move on their own. We decided to build a blanket fort in the living room, right under the slanted ceiling near the window. The fort was cozy at first, but then I noticed Emily staring at the far corner of the room. "Do you see that?" she whispered. I followed her gaze, but I didn't see anything unusual, just the faint outline of the bookshelf and the dim light from the street lamp outside. "Nothing," I said, trying to sound confident, but Emily shook her head. "I don't know, it feels like someone's watching us." I laughed nervously. "It's just the shadows. Old houses play tricks on your eyes." But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the feeling that the room wasn't empty. I could hear it in the soft, almost imperceptible scratching sound near the floorboards. I froze, my stomach twisting into knots. The scratching stopped the moment I focused on it. We tried to shrug it off and went back to watching a movie, but I couldn't concentrate. Every sound seemed to amplify: the creak of the stairs, the hum of the refrigerator, even the wind brushing against the window panes. And then I heard it. A whisper, faint, almost drowned out by the movie's sound, but undeniably there. "Go away." I froze. My friends didn't seem to hear it. I leaned closer to Emily. "Did you hear that?" She nodded, wide-eyed. We paused the movie and listened. The whisper came again, a little clearer this time. "Go away. Now." The hairs on my arms stood on end. It wasn't playful. It wasn't a prank. It felt deliberate, targeted. We scanned the room, flashlights trembling in our hands, but there was nothing. No one was there. By 1 a.m., things escalated. The temperature dropped suddenly, so cold that our breath became visible. The blankets in the fort felt damp, even though the air in the room was dry. I thought it was some strange draft, but Emily's window was shut tight. Then the scratching returned, louder this time, moving along the walls as if something or someone was circling the fort. "Maybe it's just the house settling," Emily whispered, her voice shaking. I didn't reply, because I could feel it, that unmistakable sensation of being watched, something unseen, just beyond the edge of our vision, breathing with us. Then it happened. The blanket fort walls shuddered, not from the wind, not from anyone touching them. Something pressed against the blankets from the outside, hard enough to make the fabric ripple like water. I grabbed Emily's hand, my grip tight, but she didn't pull away. Neither of us spoke. We didn't dare. The fort shook again, this time stronger, and I could swear I heard a low, guttural growl behind the walls. We bolted out of the fort, tumbling to the floor. My flashlight flickered, throwing the room into sudden darkness. For a moment, everything was silent again, but the whisper returned, louder, angrier. "Leave. Now." I don't think any of us slept for the next hour. We huddled together on the living room couch, lights on, doors locked, hearts pounding so hard I thought they'd burst. Every time one of us blinked, the shadows seemed to twitch. Every time we moved, something moved in response, just at the periphery of our sight. At around those curiosity or perhaps foolish. Courage made Emily and me tiptoe down the hall to investigate. The hallway was pitch black, the kind of dark where you can't even see your hand in front of your face. Our footsteps were careful, silent, but I could hear another set of steps echoing behind us. Slow, deliberate, and not matching ours. "With Rosé," Emily whispered. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. The steps stopped. The moment we stopped, I wanted to scream, to run back to the living room. But something compelled us to keep moving. A faint, icy draft led us to the back of the house, where there was a small, locked door we had never noticed before. I reached for the doorknob. Cold metal. I hesitated. Emily whispered, "Don't." But I had to know. The air around the door was frigid, and I could feel it pulsating, almost like it had a heartbeat. I turned the knob, and the door creaked open slowly. The hallway beyond was empty for the faint outline of a figure at the very end. It was human-shaped, but wrong. It didn't move like a person. It stood perfectly still, as if watching, waiting. And then it vanished. "Who's like that gone?" Emily grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "We shouldn't be here," she hissed. I agreed. We bolted back to the living room, slamming the door behind us. The whispering returned, echoing through the walls. "Stay. AY." By 3 a.m., we had barricaded ourselves in the living room, blankets wrapped around us, huddling in fear. Sleep was impossible. Every sound, every shadow, every creak of the house felt like it carried a threat. And the worst part, none of us knew if it was real or if our minds were just unraveling. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. None of us slept. And when morning finally came, the house felt normal again. Too normal. Sunlight spilled across the floorboards. The air was warm, and the whispering had stopped. But we all knew what we had experienced wasn't a dream. We could still feel the pressure of those unseen eyes, the cold that lingered on our skin, the sense of being watched. That night marked the beginning of what I can only describe as a series of sleepover experiences that were never quite normal again. 3 sleepovers, 3 encounters, 3 memories that still haunt me. And this was just the beginning. The next sleepover wasn't at Emily's house, but at my friend Jake's place. I thought maybe the first night was just a fluke, a combination of an old house, teenage imagination, and too many horror movies. Jake lived in a more modern home, which made it even more unsettling when things started happening. We were in the basement, sprawled on sleeping bags, playing card games and talking quietly. The fluorescent light above flickered occasionally, but we didn't think much of it until it didn't just flicker. A shadow moved across the room, and the light seemed to dim around it, almost like it was being swallowed by darkness. At first, we thought it was one of us playing a trick, but everyone was sitting still, eyes wide. Jake's dog, a normally fearless Labrador, was whimpering in the corner, staring at the darkened space under the stairs. "I think something's down there," Jake muttered. I laughed nervously. "It's probably just a box or something." But even as I said it, I could feel a chill crawling up my spine. We tried to ignore it and continued the game, but the temperature dropped suddenly, like the air itself had weighed. My breath became visible, puffing out in clouds that disappeared too quickly, as if being sucked into the shadow. The dog growled low in its throat, ears pinned back. Then I heard it a whisper, soft but unmistakable, coming from the stairs. "Go. Upstairs." I froze. The card I was holding, trembling in my hand. Jake's eyes were locked on the shadows. We all tried to convince ourselves it was our imagination. But the whispers grew louder, insistent, circling the room like a predator, pacing its prey. "Maybe it's the wind," Jake said shakily, but none of the windows were open. The whisper turned into a series of soft knocks on the wall, deliberate, rhythmic, almost like a countdown. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 1, 2. It went on 4 minutes. We stopped breathing, trying to figure out if it was some elaborate prank, but no one dared move. Then the dog barked. Suddenly, its bark cutting through the basement like a knife. But when we looked, there was nothing, no person, no movement. Only the shadow that seemed to pulse at the edge of the light. We decided to go upstairs. As we climbed the steps, each creak sounded louder, echoing down the hall. The whisper followed us, now right behind our ears. So close it felt like cold breath against our necks. Upstairs, the lights flickered again, but this time the shadow appeared at the end of the hallway. As if whitened, my stomach churned. I wanted to turn and run, but I felt paralyzed, unable to tear my eyes away from it. It didn't move like a human. Its limbs were elongated, unnatural, but it radiated intent. Watching, waiting. Jake finally whispered, "We should just leave. Now." But before we could make a move, the shadow lunged, or at least, it felt like it did. The lights went out completely, plunging us into pitch black darkness. I could hear our frantic breathing, our hearts pounding like war drums. Something moved around us, circling, almost breathing in rhythm with our own panicked breaths. Then the lights returned, and the shadow was gone. But the whispers lingered, fading slowly. "You can't stay." We never spoke of what we saw. We never laughed it off like kids pretending to be scared. The next morning, even in daylight, the basement felt wrong, like the air itself had absorbed the memory of that night. The dog refused to go down there again for weeks. But that wasn't the worst part. A week later, Jake called me. His voice trembled. "Something's happening at my house again. I think it's following me." We planned another sleepover, this time out of caution more than fun. That night, it was different. The air was thick, heavy, almost suffocating. We stayed upstairs, away from the basement, but the whispering started again, faint at first, coming from inside the walls. It grew louder, more urgent. This time we could make out words. "You shouldn't have call me." My stomach dropped. Something was inside the house. It wasn't human. My friends tried to calm me, tried to rationalize, but their own faces betrayed fear. We huddled together in the bedroom, lights on, and watched the walls. Shadows moved with intention, curling around corners, stretching unnaturally. Then, the closet door opened slowly, by itself. A chill burst out, hitting us like a wave of ice water. The whispers became frantic, overlapping, echoing from every direction. "Go. Away. Now. Before. It's too late." Jake's dog barked again, louder, more terrified. The hair on its back stood on end. Then it bolted from the room, refusing to come back. We didn't sleep. We didn't even try. Every small sound, the creak of the floorboards, the ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator felt amplified, threatening. It was as if the house itself had come alive, aware of our presence, and determined to make us leave. By 3 a.m., we decided to check the basement. I don't know why we were drawn to it, compelled, as if some invisible force was pulling us down. As soon as we opened the basement door, the temperature plummeted. Frost formed along the edges of the concrete steps. The shadows thickened, almost tangible. Clinging to our legs, 10 we saw white figure, partially human, partially shadow, crouched at the far end. It tilted its head, staring at us with an intensity that made our skin crawl. It didn't speak, but the message was clear. Leave, or else. We ran. Up the stairs, out of the basement, locking the door behind us. The whispers faded, replaced by silence, but the sense of being followed lingered. That night, none of us slept, and when morning came, the basement looked ordinary. Too ordinary, like nothing had ever happened. But the memory stayed with me, lodged in my mind like a splinter. The shadow, the whispers, the cold that burned my skin. Everything about that night was real, and nothing could convince me otherwise. And then, there was the third sleepover. The third sleepover was at my own house. BT's point, all of us were cautious anxious. Even but we couldn't resist curiosity. We wanted to know if what we experienced was real or if we all lost our minds. It started innocently enough. We set up sleeping bags in the living room, a single lamp flickering softly against the walls. We tried to laugh, make jokes, and pretend it was just another night. But the air had changed. Before anyone had even arrived, I felt a heavy, suffocating pressure that seemed to follow me. As I moved from room to room, by the time my friends arrived, the sun had dipped below the horizon, and shadows crept along the corners of the house. Every flicker of the lamp felt deliberate, as if the light itself was struggling to stay on. We tried to play board games, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. The shadows seemed to stretch toward us, curling like smoke, always at the edge of our vision. Around 11 p.m., Emily mentioned something she'd noticed earlier. Every time we blink, the shadows, they change. They're closer than before. I didn't want to admit I had noticed it too. The shadows weren't static, they were alive, writhing just out of reach, almost intelligent. And then the whispers began. Faint at first, so soft I thought I imagined them, but as the night went on, they grew louder, overlapping, urgent. You shouldn't be here. Go. While you still can. Leave. Now? Jake grabbed my arm. It's happening again, just like before. We tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. The temperature dropped so suddenly that frost formed along the edges of the carpet. Our blankets felt damp, heavy, suffocating. The shadows responded to our movements when we moved. They shifted, gliding across the floor like liquid darkness. Then came the first sighting. Emily screamed. I turned, flashlight trembling in my hand, and there it was, a figure at the top of the stairs, tall and possibly thin, with limbs that seemed too long to be human. Its head tilted unnaturally, observing us. It didn't move like a person. It moved like a shadow obeying its own rules, and then it vanished. The whispering became deafening, filling the room from every corner. Our ears rang, our hearts pounded so hard it felt like it would tear us apart. We have to leave, Jake shouted, but when we tried to move, the shadows thickened, forming a barrier between us and the door. The air was ice cold, biting at our skin, and the lamp flickered violently. We huddled together in the center of the living room, clutching each other, and tried to make sense of what was happening. The whispers were frantic now, overlapping in a chorus of warning. And then came the tapping. Slow, deliberate, coming from the walls, the ceiling, the floor, everywhere at once. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 1, 2, 3. We couldn't see it, but we could feel it, something moving, something breathing with us, something waiting for the right moment. The air vibrated with intent, like the house itself had become alive, hungry, aware of our fear. Our voices trembled as we called out to each other. The temperature rose back to normal. The lamp flickered on, and the room looked ordinary once again. Too ordinary. We didn't speak for a long time, sitting there in stunned silence. None of us could explain what had happened, and none of us wanted to. That deep down, we knew the truth. Whatever had visited us during these sleepovers wasn't human, wasn't friendly, and wasn't bound by the rules of reality. Morning came slowly. The sunlight spilling through the windows did little to ease the lingering fear. We packed up and left my house in silence, each of us avoiding eye contact. None of us slept again that day. None of us ever forgot that night. Years later, we still talk about those 3 sleepovers, each one more terrifying than the last, each one leaving a mark on our minds that never fully heals. We never stayed over at each other's houses again. We never joked about haunted houses or ghosts. And whenever we hear a creak in the middle of the night, or a whisper just at the edge of our hearing, we remember those nights and the feeling of being watched by something that should not exist. I've tried to rationalize old houses, overactive imaginations, teenage pranks, but nothing explains the whispers, the shadows, the temperature drops, or the figures we saw. And I've come to realize that maybe it's better not to explain. Maybe it's better to simply remember and never go back. If you've ever had a sleepover that felt wrong, that left you awake with the chills crawling up your spine, then you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, maybe you should think twice before spending the night somewhere unfamiliar. Because sometimes, the things that follow you home, the things that watch you in the dark, aren't gone when the sun comes up. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to leave a comment telling me which part scared you the most. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more true horror stories just like this one. Hit the bell so you never miss a story that will keep you up at night. And remember, some doors, once opened, can never be closed.